people that are secretly alive, but dead for the public life and vice versa. What do you think is the biggest secret being kept from mankind? Not so much a secret, but I think there are events that happened in the past we'll never know about that would blow our minds. Same thing for people who were interesting, incredible, unique, super talented, etc. that were never documented. Recording history has always been shoddy at best, as the further back you go. I bet even if we went back 150 years, there would be things that occurred that would be historically incredible, but since they weren't recorded, we'll never know about them. Stephen Jay Gould said it. I am, somehow, less interested in the weight and convolutions of Einstein's brain than in the near certainty that people of equal talent have lived and died in cotton fields and sweatshops. The concept of national anthems, as we know them today, only developed about 200 years ago. There are a few national anthems that as a song are older than that, but they weren't used as a national anthem initially. In more general terms, anthems as a musical form developed in Elizabethan England, second half of the 16th century. It's often claimed that the Japanese anthem is the oldest, but only the text dates back to 905, the melody is from 1880. Probably the oldest complete anthem, text plus melody. Still in use today is the Dutch anthem, which goes back to the 1600s. Evolution was a random process. Millennia ago, there might have been a caveman with an immune system so strong that not a disease in the world could have afflicted him, a genetic makeup that would grant him physical attributes that even the most roided-up modern-day human could only dream of, and intellectual abilities that would have jump-started the Iron Age in his area. Unfortunately, as a toddler, he and his whole family died in a forest fire caused by a random lightning strike, so none of that got passed on. A few years ago, I talked to a scout for an NFL team. He swore that the best defensive lineman he'd ever seen played high school football at a small school in Indiana. But the kid just had no desire to play at a higher level. His grades were good, and he wanted to go to college, and he did. But he didn't want to play college football. Listening to this guy talk, you'd think that he found the next Reggie White or Aaron Donald, and he was convinced that's how good this kid would be. I went to high school with a guy like that, he and another guy, now an NFL Hall of Famer, were the two big prospects from our area, and they were on around the same footing. But when he went to a major SEC school, he made clear he was there for school first, football second. And when that inevitably meant football had no interest in him, because he wanted an actual education. Oh well, back to his studies. He'd have been great if he'd been willing to sacrifice his education for it. But how could you possibly argue with his choice? My favorite of these lost-to-time type things is Doggerland, now submerged under the southern North Sea. It once connected Europe and the British Isles until around 6000 BC. It was rife with Mesolithic human civilization, but now it's lost beneath the waves. Occasionally fishing boats will find things like animal parts, mammoths, woolly rhinoceros, extinct lions, reindeer, plant remains like peat, and bits of Homo sapien and Neanderthal civilization like skeletal remains, tools made of flint, stone, and bone, among other things. It's fascinating to imagine what else is down there. Entire generations lived and died, and we don't know much about it aside from what washes ashore or is dredged up by fishing and construction. CIA propaganda/manipulation techniques and the extent of their reach. The only reason we know about MKUltra is because it didn't work. We know about MKUltra because of a single sheaf of documents that weren't destroyed. All we know about the entire quarter century or more the program ran comes from that one group of papers and testimony from CIA assets, scientists, and victims/subjects during the hearings in the 90s. There's no reason to believe we know everything about the program. Furthermore, MKUltra grew out of other CIA/DoD projects like Artichoke, so the program may have changed enough to simply be reclassified, but not stopped entirely. There are testimonies from other alleged test subjects that go into some pretty dark places. Some of these are certainly made up, false memories, or people with existing mental problems, but some could be true. One from Tucson alleges she was raped repeatedly and trained to kill her stuffed animals, and possibly real animals. It fits in the realm of possibility and other testimonies we've heard that I can't completely discount it. I have some stories about this. My maternal grandfather was CIA, which nobody knew until he passed in the 90s. It explained some family mysteries, but others have just been made even weirder. There is a particular institute that my mother had been sent to for testing as a child. She was telling me about it last year. She remembered a lot of two-way mirrors and an experiment with photos, where they had secretly taken a picture of her, but showed her a photo of a stranger. Then gradually the other photo was morphed with her own, until when she was shown the photo of her face, she didn't recognize it. This would have been early to mid-60s. Her mother was also locked up in the institution for months at a time, but no information remains about this. The records were apparently lost in a fire. She hadn't connected this with her father's activities. She was telling me about it in connection to another subject, but sure enough, when I did some research after she told me it had connections with MK Ultra specifically, enough so that you can find the information even on mainstream media with some hunting. The article I read mentioned LSD testing done for the MK Ultra project there, specifically, but probably not the only thing they did. After she graduated HS, her father tried everything to get her into nursing, despite her habit of fainting at the sight of blood, and she dropped out of nursing school after a month or two. Nevertheless, she received an amazing offer to come work at the institute as a nurse. She declined. I guess this isn't a secret, but humanity seems to forget quite often. There is next to no privacy in the modern age. If you're reading this, your information, search histories, shopping trends, personal connections, etc. are currently being monitored and sold in the information trade. About your aunt's pie recipes, but they'll be the first ones to start advertising the ingredients. That there are people in the world that are richer than the known richest people in the world. If you're that rich, you can afford to be anonymous too. I'm not saying that Jeff Bezos isn't rich. I'm sure he is. I just believe that there are a tiny group of people that have more wealth than Bezos, and that they've used that wealth to hide the fact that they are that wealthy from the world. For all of the people bringing up Putin, the Saudi royal family, or the ancient royal families of Europe, I'd like to say, if you know their name, and you know that they're rich, they don't count as being one of the secret wealthiest people. Now, does they? There definitely are. Most people assume that the richest people in the world are on the Forbes list. Meanwhile, Forbes states that we list individuals rather than multi-generational families who share fortunes, and also, we do not include royal family members or dictators who derive their fortunes entirely as a result of their position of power, nor do we include royalty who, often with large families, control the riches in trust for their nation. The categories that Forbes does not disclose is where the real money is. When I was younger, I read a story in the news of a company that had come up with a bacteria that they would put into your mouth. This bacteria was harmless to people, but ate the bacteria that damages our teeth. It would have destroyed the dental industry. For some reason, I never saw it again. Even if this wasn't totally sensationalized quackery that never got out of the petri dish. Given what we've learned in the past couple decades about the human body's bacterial biome and how important and delicate it is, introducing a new bacteria to eat native mouth bacteria seems fraught with unforeseen peril. In fairness, news media, rather irresponsibly IMO, often publish articles about these amazing scientific breakthroughs that are still in the theoretical modeling/petri dish/animal testing stages. Often the scientists run into problems trying to make whatever. They're doing work in humans because people are much more complex than a petri dish, so it's not uncommon to find out that potential treatments either don't work or are too unsafe to be viable in humans. I don't know about this one specifically, and the tobacco industry is notorious for muddying the waters of scientific research, so it definitely could be something more sinister, but it could also be the media being terrible at science as always.